Hello, everyone. Scooch on in here. So, I am Twoana Clark Shepherd. Most of you know me from my show, Talk About It Tuesdays. Well, I want to welcome you all to the first edition of the extension of that show, which is Talk About It with Twoana. And this is going to now be a vlog. So for those of you who don't understand what I'm saying, it's a vlog with a V. So I have pretty much the same format that you all have been used to, but we are going to be just kind of talking through, so very similar to the radio format, but we're going to be kind of talking through the conversation, same topic. We're still going to be talking about myths and misconceptions surrounding mental health and doing our best to get you and your loved ones connected with the resources necessary to live a more abundant life. But unlike the radio show, like I said, this is going to go to a vlog, and so this will be then uploaded to a YouTube channel. So even as we're recording this now, I have you all live on Facebook, like always, and then I have a second recorder going where it's just a regular video. But as always, my shows are live and raw and unscripted. And so, like always, I have a special guest with me because we need to have rich conversation that does not necessarily have to be me talking for a whole hour. So I have with me today, and scoot in a little bit more. I know I haven't got this straight. So hopefully you all can see her on Facebook for sure. I have with me today Miss Katie Greer. She is an LCPC, and she is out at Clinical Associates here in the greater Kansas City area. She specializes in women and trauma utilizing EMDR methodologies. And so as always, you guys know I like my guests to introduce themselves. And so we're also going to have her tell you a little bit about what EMDR means. So, Miss Katie, so let us just chat. Okay? Let's talk about it. So first thing, tell us a little bit about yourself, what your passion is, and all of that.
Yes, definitely. I work with all women, and that's always been a passion of mine, empowering women, helping them have healthy relationships. And you know, I do EMDR, and some people are like, what does that mean? And it's the acronym, it's an acronym, and it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
Eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
Yes. And we use it in people that have had trauma. Any kind of trauma. You know, war veterans, rape victims, domestic violence victims, a loss of a significant other, any type of trauma. And as you know, trauma comes in all forms.
Yes.
So it is a newer technique. I mean, it's not new, but it is newer.
Yeah, it's newer to a lot of people who are used to just talk therapy.
Yes.
Or they're used to something that they feel is kind of out there a little bit, you know, and so it is sort of newer, and so that's why I did want you to kind of tell people a little bit about what it is, and
and it's a technique, and we use either hand movements or tappers, and it's really retraining the brain and getting the trauma experience from one side of the brain to the other side of the brain, and kind of just working through that trauma.
Oh, I like that. I like how she explained that. So getting the trauma from one part of the brain to the other. So stick a pin right there.
Okay.
So because I want our audience to know that our conversation today is going to be about women, relationships, and mental health. Women, relationships, and mental health. So that's what we're going to be talking about.
Yes.
But we'll be looking, we'll engage with you all on Facebook, but we're going to be looking at each other like you guys see us doing oftentimes in the studio, because we're here to have a conversation with each other. And you all get to be in on the conversation as well. So as always, I want to remind my people on Facebook who are watching, if you have any questions, comments whatsoever, please say something. We will do our best about halfway through to kind of check and see what you all have said. If you have any questions for Katie or myself, please comment on the Facebook Live. Okay, so let's get into this. Back to what you were saying. You said EMDR in of itself specializes in getting the trauma to move from one part of the brain to the other. So tell us, where is it usually, and where do we want to move it to?
Well, so essentially when there's trauma, the memories are stored in a part of our brain not the correct way.
Okay.
So then the part of, EMDR is moving it, we do eye movement, that's the EM,
Okay.
And it moves it from left brain to right brain, from left brain to right brain,
Okay.
and it reprocesses it in a way that our brain is okay with that.
Okay.
So
kind of gets it to calm down.
Yes.
Not be so anxious about the trauma.
Mhm. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into some of these myths and misconceptions surrounding women and relationships. Okay. So let's talk about the first one. The myth is that women just simply don't have a clue, okay, about what their value is.
Yeah.
So women don't know their own value. And while we know that there is a lot of movement, there's a lot of attention given to women who have been oppressed, who have been abused. We've got a lot going on with the Me Too movement, right?
Yes.
And certainly trauma definitely can rock or rob a woman of her value.
Absolutely.
But I think that where we get into the problematic areas when this is an assumption that because she's a woman, she's weak, doesn't know her value, therefore she's easy pickings, as I would say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what you've dealt with that.
Yeah.
Women and their value.
Yeah, it's not that women don't know their value. It's that whether they've been in trauma situations or really, any negative situation with work, with friends, with family, is we, one, we're our own worst critic.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
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 So, and
Absolutely.
anytime, people know what your weaknesses are, and unfortunately, it's picked on.
Yes.
In a work setting,
yes.
in a friend setting,
yes.
Yes. And I use the word friend loosely there.
Yes.
In unhealthy relationships. If you're in an unhealthy relationship, your partner that has continued to degrade you,
right,
put you down,
right,
and we know that lowers our self-esteem.
Absolutely.
So it takes a lot to build that back up.
Yes.
Once you're in these unhealthy relationships,
Absolutely.
it's hard to, one, get out of,
right,
and two, you believe that you deserve that.
Right.
So,
and I think that the distinction with that then needs to be that women don't have some inherent lack of self-awareness or this inherent lack of value because we tend to maybe process trauma a little differently than our male counterparts.
Absolutely.
Right? I think that's the thing that we want people to know.
Yeah.
Because we happen to both be women.
Yes.
Right? Did y'all notice that? And so just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So the next one they all kind of build on each other or somehow relate to each other as I was doing my research. So the other myth is that women feel the need to compete by acting out in a masculine way. We feel like we, in certain situations, and obviously the first thing that comes to everyone's mind when they hear that or think about that is the work environment, right? However, wherever it may be, I think there's this myth that women have become inherently over masculine.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You and I both know that women are still underpaid. unfortunately.
Yes, and I think we all know that. There's some interesting statistics that have come out recently. They always have been available, but they've been more highlighted since the Me Too movement and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know if it's where the myth is that she's overbearing, when in actuality, no, that's not the case.
Right.
And nobody. I'm overgeneralizing there, but a lot of people wouldn't say that a man was being too masculine.
Correct. Correct. That's exactly what comes to mind. I think that a lot of times our attempts to be heard, and or could be either or together. Sometimes our areas that we're really strong and confident in, I think that sometimes our confidence can be mistaken as some fake put on of a masculine mask or posture.
Yes.
When in reality, it just may be that that's our area of strength. And man, if we're confident at something, we're going to go in, with a whole lot more, I think, energy. And so I think a lot of times the energy is mistaken for masculinity.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
When in reality, it's just that I think that kind of that's hidden in that thing you said about the equal pay and equal recognition. When people don't take their time to really learn the gender specific things to a woman, then ignorance kind of has someone thinking, well, that's a male related behavior.
Yes.
Right? Or that's a male ascribed behavior. When in reality, it's just confidence.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. So our next one is that women are full of dramatic emotions versus analytic thought.
Yes. Oh, yes.
We are overloaded.
Yeah. As women, we do tend to be a little bit more emotional. We're processors. We think through things.
Right.
But that doesn't mean emotion does not mean drama.
Yes.
It doesn't mean crazy. It doesn't mean psycho.
Yes. Yes. It doesn't.
No.
As a matter of fact, when women tend to express themselves in a more, I think, gregarious way, it's often viewed as unhealthy overexpression, which then is where that sense that we're just hyper emotional.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think oftentimes that also, though, unfortunately gets translated into, if she's upset, don't take her seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, she's just being emotional.
Yes.
If we're hurt,
yes,
it's treated that way. And then let's go to the deeper part where you and I tend to come into play as practitioners when we are traumatized.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Then there's this sense of, is she believable? Should we believe her? Right?
Yeah.
Because after all, it probably wasn't as bad as she's making it out to be.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I think that a lot of what we're seeing with certain movements, I want to keep referring to that particular movement, but I think there's a larger movement happening that, you can't actually put under a hashtag. There's a larger sound that's being made, right? And the sound in of itself is not to emasculate the men in our lives. Right?
Yes.
Most of us really desire to have a very healthy relationship with a man.
Yeah.
And we desire to have a man.
Yeah.
We don't desire to be a man.
Right.
We desire to partner with men, correct?
Yes.
But I think that a lot of times the biggest disservice with that particular myth is when real trauma has happened.
Yes.
And then you get the question, why didn't she say something?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. And why is it now all of a sudden? And, I think people too, misconstrue like being a feminist as a men basher
Yes.
or hating men.
So glad that you touched on
And that is not the case
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
I love my husband.
Yes.
You know, it's doesn't have anything to do with me hating men.
Right.
You know, we
Right.
just as women are standing up for ourselves, and
Right.
you know, women sometimes the reasons why there are many reasons why they don't speak out, and you know, if that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
But there are reasons why they
Yes.
don't speak out.
Yes. Yes.
And you know, people are wondering, why did she come out 18 years later, 5 years later, 2 years later, 6 months later? And there's reasons for that.
Absolutely. And tell me a little bit about what you've experienced with maybe latent reveals with trauma.
You know, I have to rehash those with clients, with patients, you know, and it's never good.
Right.
It's very traumatic.
Yes.
It is emotional. There's that word again.
Mhm.
You know? But until, you know, you can heal from those experiences, can you get into healthy, you know, really get into healthy relationships.
Right, which is the goal of
Yes.
today's show. And
Yes.
the topic is
Yes.
ultimately to assist women, but also assist the men that are watching this
Yeah,
in
course.
how to assist the women in just arriving at a place where your relationships are not perfect, but they're healthy.
Yes.
And so something you had said about women being, well, let me put it this way. When we're talking about women being emotional and how trauma plays into that, I think that the goal there is to recognize that emotions are a natural part of our makeup.
Of course.
And if we stop putting labels on emotions, where that's a male that's a male emotion, that's a female emotion. Emotions in of themselves were not given gender based.
No.
Going back to, you know, the dawn of creation, there wasn't a female emotion, there wasn't a male emotion.
Okay.
And so I think if we just try to rewire the way that we look at emotions, the way that we label emotions, that would go a long way. There are plenty of men who have daughters.
Yes.
And so, and they're concerned, very much so, and especially these days, we have reason to be very, very concerned, right, about the way our kids, whether they're male or female, the way things are turning out, the traumas that they experience, all those things. But there are men who are maybe watching now, who really want to know, okay, well, what do I do when certain things tend to be expressed in a way that I can't relate to?
Yeah.
And then we think about men who may be single fathers.
Yes.
And so I think that's also who I'm thinking of when I say, first and foremost, just try to reconfigure what you're seeing, and try to take the gender assumptions out of what you're seeing, and find out the data behind what you're seeing,
Yes.
right? Because that helps you empathize better.
Yes.
So when we find out what the data is behind what's going on, we can better then figure out, okay, if that was me in that place. So if my daughter has experienced some major disrespect from a peer, well, all of us were once kids.
Yes.
You know, and we know how kids can be.
Yes.
But and then when we pack on what they have today, which is way more exposure than we had,
Yes.
you can just empathize,
Yeah.
and maybe take it from more of a neutral standpoint
Absolutely.
of empathy versus labeling it a female emotion.
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
And how many times? I mean, I don't know if you've heard this. Crying is a wuss thing. You know, we don't stop crying. Stop crying. Stop
Yes.
crying. Especially for men.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
That still is not accepted.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's okay.
That's right. And it leads to a really unhealthy place.
Absolutely.
For our men, for our boys as they become men, which then leads to a whole lot of breaches in the relationships between men and women.
Yep.
Again, they're not being a real advocate for healthy expression of emotion.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a good segue into our next one, which is that women are naturally the nurturer in the room. Women are naturally the nurturer in the room. And so I know if we have women watching, you know, some of you may be rolling your eyes in your head and can relate to this. I think that I used to assume that until I began to meet two categories of people. Women that were not naturally nurturing, and men who were very nurturing, and I would see them in, for instance, more nurturing than, people who know me know I'm a pretty nurturing person. So if I meet a man who's more nurturing than me, man, that's, you know, that says something to me, but that's not necessarily a bad thing either. I think that when we see people operating, maybe even in a situation, maybe not in their entire personality, is the woman not nurturing. She may not be a nurturer, if that makes sense. That's a double negative, but y'all get what I'm saying. It just may be that in certain relationships or certain environments, she's not the nurturer. Yeah. But we need to be okay with that.
And that's okay.
Right? Because it could be that in let's say in a marriage, as you start to even have children, and you figure out one day that, man, you know, my husband's more nurturing than I am.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that men should be shamed for being nurturers, nor should women be shamed for not being as nurturing in a particular situation. Right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we could talk about, there are those points though where we get to the edge and it's like, okay, something is off, right? We can see that where a woman lacks nurturing where it's really needed. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So there's those situations, and we don't want to downput those. Right. Or you know, not acknowledge them. But I think that for the most part, it's important that we not assume that the woman in the room is the nurturer.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think that there's times where, for instance, there's jobs, there's positions, especially in a more corporate setting, where a woman has worked hard to get to a certain level, and she doesn't really have the space when she's at work, when she's in that position of leadership. She doesn't have the space to respond in a way that's more of a nurturing way. She has to do more facts, more data-driven. She has to make more data-driven decisions. Right. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that something's wrong with her. No. I think that was the part that got me about that particular myth, is that the description behind that was that if a woman is not the nurturer, meaning she's not taking the lead in that role in a situation, then there's something wrong with her. Yeah.
And you know as well as I do that us women, we wear many different hats. Yes. And sometimes, like the example you gave in that situation, in a corporate situation where she's not getting paid to be the nurturer.
That's right.
It's not her job. You know?
She's not being paid to be the nurturer.
So,
and her job depends on her,
her analytical brain.
Her analytical brain, which women have.
We do, absolutely.
We have analytical brains. We too have analytical brains.
Yes.
So, next one is this one. And it's good that it's kind of in the middle. This one is that most women on some level have daddy issues. Most. Now that's the key there, that most women on some level have daddy issues. I don't know what you want to say about that, but the first thing that comes to mind with me again is the assumptions that go with that. Meaning, if something is going on that she is struggling with, or that she maybe has had to hold someone accountable for in a relationship, because she might have a preference in how she's nurtured. She might have standards, right? She may have standards in how she's cared for, how she's loved, point blank, right? And when she goes to express those standards, sometimes it's just kind of pushed off as, oh, she has daddy issues because she's wanting too much from her partner.
Yeah, I hear it all the time. You know, I get women clients and, well, my significant other says I have daddy issues. That's not it at all. I hear that a lot.
Yeah, because I think it was a phrase that still has a lot of validity, but it became a catchphrase, unfortunately.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yep.
So it's a go-to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so when those women, what do you usually do to kind of help them kind of walk that down?
Yeah. So then I say, okay, let's explore that. Do you have daddy issues? Well, no, I have a really healthy relationship with my dad. Okay, then it's not daddy issues.
Right.
And yes, of course, sometimes there's abandonment stuff. That's abandonment issues, not necessarily daddy issues. You know, so we just really dissect that, you know, and get to the bottom of it.
And I think it's helpful for those who are watching that we do spend a little time just kind of talking through, you know, what does that even mean? And like you said, I think it's more important to look at where are the gaps, right? Yeah. Where are the gaps in the nurturing of the child that may be the adult that's in the room with us at that time. Look for the gaps. And yes, there's often times that when you're looking for the gaps, you might find that the gap is in how that person was fathered.
Yes.
Right? But at the same time, I think that, again, it's more helpful to then look at how to help that person begin to advocate for filling the gaps.
Yes.
That's our job.
Yes.
To help people advocate for themselves and what they need.
Yeah.
By first helping them discover what it is that they need.
Yes.
And develop a healthy relationship with what it is they need. But first, we gotta look for the gaps. Right? Look for the gaps. And if you are watching, or you're going to share this video with a man, or you're going to send him to the YouTube channel, if you suspect that the woman in your life is struggling in any way with some gaps, and you think that it's affecting your interaction with her specifically, definitely be compassionate and just kind of support her in figuring out where the gaps are. And then you benefit in the end. That's the thing. You benefit more than you can even imagine, versus sticking a label on it and almost shaming her with that. Furthermore, if a woman does have a gap in a relationship with her father, I was that woman.
Yeah.
Right? It certainly stands to reason that it kind of would be equated to re-victimizing her or re-traumatizing her, should I say, all over again, when anyone, whether it's a man who says it or a female, whether it's a male or a female who jumps at that label, it does not help her.
No.
To just throw that label on there and then just kind of throw it out blanketly and like, that's what your problem is. Yeah. Go figure that out.
Right.
Right?
No, of course that's going to trigger that person. And, you know, anytime we come at somebody is never good.
Right.
You know, and especially, you know, pouring salt on an old wound.
Yes. Exactly my point. Exactly.
You know?
My point. Yes.
So, yes, and that's never a good thing.
Right, right. So, we're going to take a minute to look at our Facebook feed and see. So I'm going to come really close to the camera and see if we have any questions or comments. That we have one person, Miss Twoana, said she's been wanting to try that. So she's probably talking about EMDR.
Yes.
Right? And
yes,
so,
Twoana, try it.
Okay. So we're definitely going to give contact information, as I always do, before we are finished with our show. So I want to thank everybody also who is watching. Hi, y'all. Who is out in our Facebook audience watching. And so we're going to continue with our last couple here. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some tips and some instructions, some things that would be helpful for you all to move forward and make progress with anything that may have struck a chord with you that we're talking about today. So the next one is, in order to raise healthy children, women must be either stay-at-home moms or they must make the primary part of their day and time. So the 24 hours in that day, right?
Yes.
The primary chunk of that time. No, let's go. The majority of the chunk of that time must be spent with their child in order for their child to be healthy, right?
Yes.
So the idea here is that women either are failing at being a good mother if they're not doing everything in their power to make their child their world, right?
Yes.
So what have you seen with that?
You know, again, we wear multiple hats, and it's 2018. You know?
It is.
And
let's talk about that.
And we still have this myth where your children are better off if you stay at home, if you're a stay-at-home mom, and, you know,
or if you're with them
24/7. Yes. And the last time I checked, it takes two people to make a baby.
Yes.
And
yes.
you know, again, we wear multiple hats, and we don't just have to be mothers.
Right.
We can be friends, we can be daughters, we can have careers, we can have hobbies, we can do all of that and be great moms at the same time.
We can.
Yes.
Yes. We know a little bit about that personally.
Yes.
And, you know, I think that it goes into the last one, kind of like, because of all the other stereotypes and myths and misconceptions, then if there is an issue with your child, you need to fix it.
Yep.
You need to fix it.
Yep.
Because we're fixers.
Yeah.
Right? Before we started recording, we were talking about that, like how we're fixers, but we're not.
No.
Really. Like, there is no natural fixer out of either gender.
No.
That just didn't happen when we were created, right? No. And so women, though, we're thought that if something is wrong with your kids, then you must fix it. Then we tend to think we need to fix it.
Yeah.
Right? And so I put some notes behind that. The ideal there is that motherhood must be easy, enjoyable, easy and enjoyable, and our kids must be happy and doing well. If that's not the case at any given time, and we're not saying that there doesn't need to be a priority on creating healthy adults, but that's really not within our control. It is within our sphere of influence, and I'm always working with people on knowing the difference between what you have control of when it comes to relationships. And at the end of the day, yes, there is a very huge difference between the fact that you have a relationship with something that you created versus someone that you brought on. However, at the end of the day, relationships are about two or more human beings. And so even though we created them, they're still human beings. So we don't have control over the outcome. We do have control over our influence.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so that means then that if something is wrong, out of all the problems in the world and all the kids in the world, we don't have the power to necessarily fix it.
Right. Yes.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure you can relate to this, but in any situation, if you know, Thanksgiving's coming up, families
Yes.
are all going to be together.
Yes.
A kid falls down. Where does everybody automatically put that kid
That
to?
is so
To the
good.
mom.
That is so good.
You know,
Everybody just, it's like that
Yeah.
thing in the movie where
Uh-huh.
everybody just whoosh
Yeah.
in on the mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and even though the dad may, you know,
Be right
probably
there.
present, you know,
Mhm.
oh, just go to mom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your hands might be full, you might be cooking, you might be entertaining. Oh, but still, here, you need to, you know,
Yes.
take care of this.
Yes.
You need to fix
yes,
this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We need to fix it. And it's interesting because our kids, like most human beings, all human beings, learn probably the most valuable lessons through trial and error.
Of course. As do we. Yeah.
Right? Trial and error. So if we're fixing all the time, then we tend to miss out on instilling resiliency.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Our
Yeah.
kids need resilience. And now more than ever,
Mm-hmm.
they need resilience.
Yes.
But there's like these competing ideas,
Yeah.
right, floating around about what a woman, once she's a mother, what her job is,
Yes.
what her abilities
Mhm.
are, right?
Yes.
And so I think then we take that on because, again, I want to be clear that we're not necessarily saying that all of these things we're talking about are forced upon us by people outside of us. I want to be clear because at this point, sometimes you don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, because as a society, we came up with these myths
Mm-hmm.
and we fed them to the point where they became toxic.
Yep.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And then it begins to break down a woman's sense of self. And it does break down her sense of value.
Yes.
And so we as a society then have to be responsible for rewriting the script
Yes.
properly.
Yes.
Right? And
Yep.
so when it comes to being a parent, we have a huge part of that responsibility as women
Mm-hmm.
in saying, you know, I can't really fix that.
Right.
You know, what I can do is influence you to seek out your own fix.
Yes.
Your own fix.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I see that even as young as when kids start to fall. I love kind of this new thing that's really not new, but it is, I guess, where you're seeing kids fall, and I think there's even a TV commercial out now where you're like, second child, you know, first child, you're jumping off.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Everything's delicate.
Yeah.
Everything's delicate. Must be, you know, dotted with an I and the T's crossed. But with the second child, you're like, no blood.
Brush it off.
Brush it off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that there is a lot of validity and value to taking that mindset on.
Yes.
Because to me, that's healthy. You're not talking about, okay, I'm so neglectful that my child becomes
Right.
traumatically injured.
Yes.
And I'm off. We're not talking about that
No,
mother, right?
No. Right.
We're talking about the mother that is able to not be on hype all the time.
Helicopter.
There
Yes.
you go. Oh, yes.
Mhm.
No helicopter.
Yes.
We don't
Yeah.
want that
No.
because it tends to create, like I said, a child that lacks resiliency.
And,
Tell me a little bit about what you've seen with
Mhm.
that, with the hovering or not hovering.
You know, the hovering, what we call the helicopter parent, is the one that is constantly there, constantly trying to fix it, you know, and that really does create codependency issues,
Yes.
which is not healthy.
Right. And tell our audience what codependency is, because I think it's a buzzword. Do people think they know what it means? But they don't.
Yeah,
Right?
you know, because I always thought when like codependency was, I'm dependent on alcohol or drugs, and no, when we're talking relationships, it's codependency is your feelings are dependent on somebody else. So if your significant other is mad, then you're mad. Or you find when your significant other is happy, then you're going to be happy because they're happy. It's codependent, and it's not healthy.
Right. So it's giving up control.
Yes. Yeah.
Of the one thing you can control, which is you. You know, I have this exercise that I do when I do workshops where I have people put up their hand. The hand is the mirror, and they kind of wave it back and forth, and I get them used to just getting a locked in glare on that hand.
Yeah.
Because I tell them, you know how much you can control? You can control this much.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
The man in the mirror, the person in the mirror, that's all that you can control.
Yes.
Right? And so when we tend to think that our role is to really control all the grief, all the burdens, all the pain, as much as we would love to, and fathers love to as well, I'm sure, but there's more of an assumption that we have to.
Yes.
Right? And so whenever we start getting into that, we're in trouble. We're weakening, and our kids now have way more to fight off than we did.
Yes.
So it's more important than ever,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That we begin to allow them to grow in terms of resilience.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're at the point, this has been good discussion.
Yeah.
And it flies by, you guys.
Yeah.
It flies by. So this is the point where we're going to kind of give our viewers some tips.
Yeah.
Right? So give them some takeaways. How can they make progress when it comes to just either becoming that woman that they can be proud of when they look in the mirror and feel good about her, and she is adjusted and healthy.
Yeah.
And even if she's been through, and not even if, a lot of times in the midst of the biggest traumas, because people didn't have a lot of trauma, we wouldn't have a job.
Absolutely. Right.
So especially that woman, we need to give her, or her supporters that are watching, her children that are watching, her spouse or friends or whoever that are watching, some takeaways. And so the first one that I came up with was make time to figure out who you are. What defines success for you, so that no one can kind of bully you, intimidate you, shame you into either hiding who you are or forming into who they would like you to be. The reason for this is that you need to be intentional about it, because if you don't do that before you engage in major relationships, so we're talking before you decide to be a wife to someone, before you decide to take on motherhood, maybe even before you decide to embark upon that huge career move or decision. A person who is secure is a person that is trustworthy and reliable, and you want to be that. But it also does a huge amount for your sense of self-worth when you have gone through the process. And if you didn't go through the process before you did all that, I was not that woman. I didn't, I know how important it is to do that. I know the costs and the pain and the unnecessary struggle that you go through, that sometimes you may even take your children through.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might even take your spouse through.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we do that first. That's my first tip to you, is make sure you make the time to discover who you are.
Yes.
Who you want to be and what defines that for you. And then I'll let you share the second one. I think you kind of came up with that one.
Yes, that it's okay to be single. I know all of us want to, it's human nature, right? To want to be have a companion. Until, like Twoana said, until you know who you are and discover who you are, can you really be in a healthy relationship? And it's okay to be single. You don't have to date. You don't have to be on online dating sites. It's a lot of my patients that I work, especially the ones that are struggling with codependency or unhealthy relationships or trauma, I tell them, don't date for 6 months, period.
That's a very good
Don't
time
date for
frame.
6 months.
Very good time frame.
Yeah.
Yes, because with each trauma that you endure, each disappointment, and the breakup of a significant relationship for sure
Oh, yes.
is traumatic.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And losses require a time of grieving.
Yes.
Losses require a time of grieving. And so that's a gift that you give yourself. Don't look at it as, oh, I'm going to be lonely. I'm going to struggle more because I'm not connected to somebody, or I'm not connecting or hooking up with someone. Rather, you need to heal in order to bring your best self to that next relationship.
Yes.
And if you find that you're in the midst of a relationship and you haven't done that, it may be a very courageous thing to do, but you need to take the time to do it. And some people are in the midst of marriages. Obviously, we wouldn't advocate getting a divorce so you can do that. But there are still ways that you can take time out. That just means being intentional.
Yes.
Be intentional about taking time for yourself. Talking about, or looking back on what we talked about earlier with figuring out where the gaps were.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then loving yourself enough to do the work to fill those gaps. So,
yes,
it's okay to be single.
Yes, it is.
Okay? So the next one is proper and intentional self-care is not just a must, but Katie added to this one. I love that, we talked beforehand because we came up with these together. And it's not only a must, but it's okay. That's what you said.
It is okay. It is okay.
Ladies.
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay.
For you to take time to yourself.
It's okay to lock the bathroom door and sit in the bathtub and, take 30 minutes to decompress from your day.
Yes.
It's okay to go and spend that $70 or whatever it costs to go get your hair done and not feel guilty about it.
Yes.
It's okay to go out with that one friend that makes you feel good.
Yes.
All of those things are okay.
Yes. I love that. That's why I loved adding that, because not only do we not do it because we don't necessarily know to do it, and that's what I was addressing, but then she came in with that it's okay. And in reality, statistically, I find that that's actually the reason more than anything. It's not a lack of knowledge, because we have self-care stuff surrounding us everywhere today, right?
Yeah.
And so, but a lot of women don't feel like it's okay. They will not allow themselves to care for themselves. They feel guilty.
Yes.
You must do it.
Yes.
Again, because you have to bring your best self. If you don't care for you, then you are going to suck.
Yes.
Okay? Because I talk real talk here.
Yeah.
At being that mother, at being that friend, at being that wife, at being that servant, whatever capacity in life you serve in, you're going to struggle. And you're going to bring toxicity because you haven't taken time to get the toxicity out by practicing self-care.
Yes.
So, you can go ahead and share the next one.
So, talking and expressing your emotions versus holding it in. It is so important to use words like, I feel like. It's okay. And it's okay if somebody gets a little uncomfortable if you say, I feel sad, or I feel mad, or whatever the case may be. It is okay to express that. And it's better to do that when we don't hold it in, that way we don't hold it all in, and you know as well as I do, when we bottle all that in, it just comes out in word vomit.
Right.
What I call word vomit.
I love that. It surely does.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of like, here's my transparent moment with my husband, because as soon as you said that, I just started cracking up, and probably if you could see me blushing, I was blushing for a quick second, because I immediately saw his face. And in that, what I'm talking about is whenever we don't take time intentionally to listen to the women in our lives, as he's learned that, when we don't take time to listen or make that space for us to just kind of express whatever's on our mind. And that's just in one particular aspect. Then I tend to vomit on him.
Yes.
Right? And
oh, I'm guilty of it too.
right?
Absolutely.
And it doesn't feel good for the person being vomited on, and it doesn't feel good for us either.
No.
Because we know that's what we're doing. And then we spend all this time not really having a healthy exchange, but more so I know me feeling bad, like, oh my gosh, did I say too much? Did I blah, 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 blah. And so nothing healthy happens. Rather being intentional.
Yes.
To find a place and a space to talk.
Yes.
You know, I don't care if you need, it can be everything from something informal, like a support group, to something as formal as making an appointment with a therapist. It could be something as formal, secondary to that, as making some time with a coach. Maybe you've worked through some of the heavier issues, but you are still working on being stuck socially. So it's okay to join a group or like I said, sign up to meet with a coach or even a mentor, whatever, a peer group. Just be intentional about finding a place to express yourself.
Yes.
And then the next one, I'm going to flip the order because the one we were going to say last actually kind of goes with the previous two, which is, I'm going to let you share that one. Being picky about the company you keep. But that last part, Katie added on.
Yes, yes. So a lot of times, we as women, we settle in relationships. One, because we feel like we have to be in one. Two, because we don't know what a healthy relationship is. 3, because we don't know ourselves and what we want in a relationship. And so we tend to settle. And that's not healthy, and that's not good for the person that you're in the relationship with. So that's what, again, when it comes down to getting to know yourself, what you want in a significant other, and what's acceptable to you, and again, knowing yourself so you can be in a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. And that applies for all relationships. Again, right? Because you not only need to bring your best self, but it's okay for you to require that of the people that you spend your time with. Oftentimes, when I give talks, I talk about those 5 people closest to you. And so it's okay to be picky about them. You should be picky about them. The 5 environments you go into the most and the 5 people you spend the most time with, those people need to be the result of some standards that you have set up, that you have then vetted them through. So do not settle.
Yes.
Okay? It's okay for you to not just expect to bring your best self. The point I was making was you need to expect them to bring their best self.
Yes.
Okay? And finally, ask for help.
Yes.
Please ask for help. All of us super women out here, okay, we are doing a lot, and there's a lot of great things that have happened, a lot of great progress that has happened with women that has opened the doors. For all that's not going that great, there has been some great movement in terms of access for us, right, and doors being open. Well, it can also be very overwhelming, right? The further our reach is, the more we take on to our plate, right? And so then if you're talking about most of the previous myths that we discussed, if you're not really intentional about asking for help when you need it, despite what you think it might, how you think it might make you look or whatever, it's really important that you ask for help, because the reality is that I say all the time, nobody can do this life in a vacuum. We were not created to do life in a vacuum.
No.
We were created for relationships.
Yes, we were.
Out of all the things we prioritize, you might not always know it depending on what society you're looking at, but we were created for relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's how we
have companions.
Yes.
Yeah. And and I think too, as women asking for help, we think it's a sign of failure.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's quite the opposite.
Right.
I know I need help in this area. I know I need, just a babysitter so I can go and do this, or I know I need help with even simple things. Oh, unloading the dishwasher, or just even simple things.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, our brains are wired that if we ask for help, we're failing, and
Yes.
that's not the case.
No, not at all. Because again, we can't thrive when we're in a cylinder, when we're in a vacuum. So it's important to ask for help. So, if there's nothing else that you can think of, I can think of, we have come to the end of our discussion. You have been listening and watching Talk About It with Twoana, where we discuss the myths and misconceptions surrounding mental health, all issues related, and do our best to get you and your loved ones connected to the resources needed to live a very abundant life. You have been listening and watching myself with my special guest, Miss Katie Greer, and I'm going to allow her to give any contact information she wants to give. If you have any questions that you want to reach out to her, you want to reach out in private message, that is always available for those of you who have more maybe sensitive issues that you might want some guidance on. So go ahead and give whatever contact information you want to give.
Thank you, and I've enjoyed being here so much.
I have so enjoyed
Great conversation.
You. Yes.
Again, my name is Katie Greer, and I'm at Clinical Associates, and I'm in Lenexa. And you can look up Clinical Associates on the web, and it will give you my email address and phone number and where I'm at, and again, what I specialize in. So.
And then my contact information, you can find me at abundantlivinglegacy.org. You can make inquiries on my website. You can find me at abundantlivinglegacy@gmail.com. Then my direct confidential voicemail line is 913-820-2173. Thank you so much for watching and for tuning in. I want to say a special shout out to my Facebook Live audience. Hi, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Please tune in next week. We'll be back with you. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.